Hi guys, it's Friday! Okay, so I actually took the time and organized my thoughts, wrote down notes, and have a plan. Efficiency. There's no need to tell me I'm not brave enough to be in Gryffindor. Malfoy's already done that. I think at this point I've established that I really stand by the sorting for, where everyone has been placed. And I just feel like someone needs to quote Mr. Ollivander at Neville, something along the lines of, I think we can expect great things from you, Mr. Longbottom. Everyone believes Neville that maybe he was sorted wrong, I think. If they'd all just have a little more faith in him, maybe he wouldn't get kicked around quite so much, although, Ron and Harry do tell Neville to stand up for himself, so that's definitely something. I think it should be noted that J.K. Rowling mentions Nicholas Flamel when Ron and Harry are on the train, and I think I have two different points to make from that. The first is to the newbies who are following us who've never read it before, and that is just you really, try to keep track of as many characters as you want, as many characters as you're able to. You never know who's going to pop up again. I'm kind of going to challenge the people who have read before even once, twice, or 20 times. I want you to try to keep track of how many characters get mentioned before we actually know anything about them. They just get mentioned in passing. Right now, off the top of my head, I can think of 5 non-Weasleys that we've mentioned. I'm not going to give anything away because obviously that would be a giant spoiler, but I can think of 5 non-Weasley members that come to play big parts that have already been mentioned in the first book that come into play later in the series. So, go to Dumbledore. That's what we should have done ages ago. If we try anything ourselves, we'll be thrown out for sure. With this quote, Hermione once again just proves that she's the voice of reason when it comes to this trio, that, she wants to play by the rules, she wants to play it safe, and, at 11, I absolutely would have sided with her. It never would have even crossed my mind not to go straight to an adult. We're having some issues uploading it, but we did have a guest blogger for Sunday, and she did post her video, so that'll be, below. But she did mention something that I'm sure I've considered but never really stopped to think about, and she mentions about, Harry's never really had an adult he can trust, and, that really makes sense. Of course he's not going to go to an adult. He's never had an adult that he could go to that would believe in him, and unfortunately it's kind of a recurring theme throughout this series. McGonagall doesn't trust him now, so it just kind of leads to this, furthers that mentality that Harry has, that he sees what's happening, he understands what's going on, and once again an adult's letting him down and not believing him. So we've had a couple mentions this week about the Forbidden Forest and how dangerous it is and how they use that as punishment, and I kind of have 2 things to kind of touch on that. The first being that I do kind of wonder at how dangerous the Forbidden Forest really is, or if that's just something it's forbidden, not because it's super dangerous and they let those rumors run around like old wives' tales, but because if they had this whole forest ground that they could have these kids running around at, it'd probably be disaster. My other point, though, is Draco says, I thought we'd be copying lines or something, and he says, I'm gonna tell my father, and Hagrid says, he's gonna tell you that this is how they do it at Hogwarts. And I kind of thought about it, and regardless of if the Forbidden Forest is really dangerous or not, kids think it is. And I do think that it's kind of a harsher punishment because sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never hurt me is common in the Muggle world, but in the Wizarding world, sticks, stones, and words can all hurt you. And, when you've got a bunch of underage wizards running around, potentially cursing off people's noses, and they really have to have a stronger punishment for those, I think, than just copying lines. If you're going to be cursed forever, death's better, isn't it? I think this quote of Harry's is a huge setup for developing the character of Harry Potter. It really sets him apart from Voldemort. Even at 11, Harry can grasp that being cursed forever isn't necessarily less scary than being dead, which I find is really interesting, because I think for a lot of young people, or people in general, death is a very difficult concept to grasp. But you know, from the time he was a year old and up, you know, he had to, his aunt and uncle were telling him his parents had died in a car crash. He had to understand very quickly that death was very real, and that it was a permanent status. He knew his parents were never coming back. So I think that's got a large part of why he is able to grasp this concept, a huge defining factor between Harry and Voldemort, and really sets up for the coming books. So I just thought I'd kind of draw attention to that quote. But that's all I have for today. We'll see you next week when we start Chamber of Secrets. Y'all have a great weekend, and Alex will see you tomorrow.